Blog Talk Radio.
This is Western Red on the World. We cover the lives of people in the political context and their relations to the nation-state, the global political, from Nairobi in Kenya to Caracas in Venezuela, to Cairo in Egypt, to London in the United Kingdom, to Moscow in the Russian Federation, to Washington, the center of modern Western power, to the diplomatic capital of France. The political trends in many countries, from the Tory government in the UK to the right of center government in Paris on the Sarkozy, to Italy and the government that sits in Rome, to Reykjavik in Iceland, Tokyo, Beijing, the Democratic Republic of Korea, and other stops in between, as we try to make sense out of the world of politics, and specifically geopolitics, looking at the history of nations, pre-revolutionary and revolutionary stages, evolutionary politics, and the impact of social movements that are either progressive or regressive. These are the things that we want to take a closer look at as we develop this particular series. Now on with this installment. This is Boston Red for the second day of September 2011. It's 12:26 GMT time. In Libya, Colonel Gaddafi vows to fight on. He sent a message out accusing international forces of seeking to occupy Libya for its oil and other resources, and warning them to prepare for guerrilla warfare. The international community has forced Libya into a civil war. Imperialism is hated by Libyan people. Who can accept it? All the people will fight against imperialism. He also urged his supporters to keep up resistance to the uprising in Libya that's forced him into hiding. He calls struggle against foreign aggression, and those against him were divided. He vowed not to surrender, saying he would carry on the fight, even if you cannot hear my voice. Continue the resistance. We will not surrender. We are not women. We are going to keep on fighting. You will hear this statement of his and an article from Al Jazeera in both English and translated into Spanish by our own Doc Holliday. And we move on. The government installed there in Libya has given the Gaddafi forces another week to lay down their arms. They, of course, have rejected this. An update here: the EU has banned oil imports from Syria. Turkey has suspended relations with Israel, including military cooperation. That's due to a report that is coming out today of a Turkish-flagged ship that was fired upon on its way to Gaza to perform a humanitarian mission. It had 8 Turkish nationals on it, an American man of Turkish descent. It was stormed by Israeli commandos. Thus, the downgrading, and this is very important because Turkey, along with Egypt, were one of 2 nations in that area of the world that cooperated with Israel. Now, they will not According to this statement, they asked for an apology, and that has not happened. And Ban Ki-moon will release the report today. Went on to say here that Israel, in fact, has misused many of the chances we were given to them, and the Israeli government, on the other hand, see themselves as being above international law and human conscience. That was the Turkish Prime Minister speaking there. He expelled the Israeli ambassador, lowered diplomatic relations with Israel to the second secretary level, recalled all their envoys, and suspended military agreements, and the Turkish Navy will update its presence in the East Mediterranean. Turkey does not recognize Israel's blockade of Gaza as legal and taking the matter to the International Court of Justice. The report being released today is called the Palmer Report. It's by Godfrey Palmer, a former Prime Minister of New Zealand. So we shall see what the report says, and if anyone should actually listen carefully to it. Secret files, so-called secret files, were discovered at the Libyan intelligence agency that stated that spies were in the camp of the opposition. Maybe, maybe not. One never does know when these things appear. In South Africa, Muammar, he's the leader of the youth faction, ANC, and he faces a disciplinary hearing. In Mexico, violence has increased. Now school teachers are too scared to go teach school. We'll hear about that in our presentation that's coming up. But next we'll hear from an African American group that was part of the Cherokee Nation by a treaty of 1866. Now they have been literally banned, vanished from the Cherokee Nation under a racist administration, a Tea Party type government by a man named Smith. There's a demonstration down there today in the southwest state of Oklahoma in so-called Indian country, and if you go to our sister program Boston Red, you will find out more about that under the Cherokee Nation. And so we go on the 26th day of, on the second day of September. We're moving too fast.
Thousands of people who thought they were Cherokee Indians are now finding out this week they're not.
Yeah, that's what the Cherokee Supreme Court has ruled, upholding a 2007 constitutional amendment that kicks out so-called freedmen, the descendants of Cherokee slaves.
Fox 23's Ian Silver is joining us now with a breakdown of the court's decision. All right, Ian.
Well, that constitutional amendment from 2007 requires all Cherokee citizens to have at least one ancestor with Cherokee blood. But for the descendants of freed Cherokee slaves, it effectively strips them of citizenship and the right to vote in Cherokee elections. Today, they told me it takes something much more important, their identity.
I was totally surprised and shocked. I've known from the time that I was a little girl that we had Cherokee blood.
But after the court's ruling Monday, Waynetta Laurie is no longer a Cherokee citizen.
I can't trace all the way back, the lineage all the way back to where the bloodline started. But I know in my heart and my mother's heart and my grandmother's heart, that we were Cherokee, Point Cherokee.
Waynetta and 2,800 other people, mostly descendants of freed slaves or freedmen, registered as Cherokee citizens 5 years ago under a treaty from 1866. That's the heart of their dispute, whether the treaty allowed their citizenship or the Cherokee Constitution, which revoked their citizenship in 2007. For Laurie, the ruling doesn't just take away her access to Cherokee resources and her right to vote in Cherokee elections.
Taking away the identity, my identity that I have, We weren't in it just because they have casinos and they're making money, we're not getting anything from it.
Kenneth Payton is still a Cherokee citizen under the constitutional amendment, but says he will fight the ruling as far as he can for those he says are being robbed of their rights, mostly because of the color of their skin.
This is a human rights issue as well as a civil rights issue that they're very well aware of what they're doing. It's very unfortunate.
Payton says every freedman should have the same rights as all Cherokees because they've shared Cherokee culture for generations and only add to what makes the Cherokee Nation great.
We are a big quilt. When we all come together, we become stronger. And anybody with any amount of wisdom would know that. We become stronger. We're not going to delete it or make it weaken. We'll make it stronger.
I also talked to Cherokee Nation Attorney General Diane Hammonds today. She says the court ruling had nothing to do with race, politics, or sharing Cherokee resources. She says it means only one thing.
The Cherokee people can determine for themselves who's Cherokee. And the Citizenship Amendment that was passed in 2007 just requires that you have to have at least one ancestor that has some Indian blood. You have to be Indian to be a member of an Indian tribe.
Hammonds also says that unlike other Indian tribes, the amendment does not specify how much Cherokee blood a person needs to qualify for citizenship. Ian Silver, Fox 23 News.
Yeah, there is a federal case, too, involving Cherokee citizenship rights. No word yet when the U.S. Supreme Court could issue its opinion.
2011.
To power. And in an audio message broadcast on a Syrian TV channel, Gaddafi called on his supporters to prepare for a long battle against Libya's new leaders.
Our resistance is mounting day by day. Prepare yourselves for a long guerrilla war and fight and resist occupation. We need to kill the army of the enemy, whether they are foreigners or Libyan.
Gaddafi asks loyalists to resist aggression. Muammar Gaddafi ha instado a sus seguidores a que mantengan la resistencia a la insurrección en Libia, que ha obligado a la clandestinidad. La sede en Siria al rey, al canal de televisión, dijo. El derrocado líder pidió a sus partidarios para continuar lo que él llamó la lucha contra la agresión extranjera, y dijo que estos contra él se dividieron. Fue citado por la publicación de un mensaje, por lo que se juró nuevamente a no rendirse, diciendo que sería seguir peleando. El pro-Gaddafi translation. Muammar Gaddafi has urged his supporters to keep up their resistance to the uprising in Libya that has forced him into hiding, the Syria-based Al-Rai television channel said. The toppled leader asked his supporters to continue what he called struggle against foreign aggression, and said those against him were divided. He was quoted as saying in a message. He vowed again not to surrender, saying he would carry on fighting, the pro-Gaddafi television channel.
Muammar Gaddafi also says that tribes loyal to him are ready for battle. So how powerful are Libya's tribes and where do their loyalties lie? Well, Libya has about 140 tribes, but only 30 are considered politically significant. Muammar Gaddafi is from the Gaddafi tribe, concentrated in Sirte. It's small, but its members held many prominent political and military positions under his regime. When Gaddafi came to power, he built an alliance with the Warfala tribe. It's Libya's largest and is centered on Bani Walid. But many of the tribe's members are believed to have broken with Gaddafi since the uprising began. The Zuwaya tribe are spread out over a large area in the east, making them a considerable force. And the Obeidi tribe is centered in the northeastern town of Tobruk. But as Al Jazeera's Sue Turton reports now, the exact role the tribes will play as the uprising against Gaddafi continues is open to debate.
The fighters up here in the Western Mountains have been saying they don't believe that new deadline that applies to Sirte of extending the surrender deadline for another week refers also to Bani Walid. The commanders have been up at a military council meeting in Tripoli, and they're hearing that still the attack on Bani Walid could happen in the coming days. We've been talking to some of the fighters who make up the Warfala tribe, who are preparing themselves as one of the brigades that will lead that onslaught on Bani Walid. Bani Walid itself dominated by their own tribe. We talked to them about how they felt about the fact they would be attacking their own people. And they said that they thought, okay, Gaddafi's Libya used to be all about tribes, but the new Libya, tribalism is dead. They said now it's about who's right and who's wrong, and Libya is made up of one tribe.
Meanwhile, world leaders met members of Libya's National Transitional Council in Paris on Thursday to discuss the country's future. The so-called Friends of Libya agreed to unfreeze around $15 billion of Libyan government assets. French President Nicolas Sarkozy praised the international response, while others criticized Arab nations for not doing more.
In Côte d'Ivoire and in Libya, we had a policy backed and authorized by the UN, which put military might at the service of protecting civilian populations. They were at risk of being massacred by their own leadership. There have been tens of thousands of lives that have been spared in Libya thanks to this intervention.
With the available armies and air forces of the Arab countries, we might have been able to carry out operations without the help of NATO, but this was not the case.
And Al Jazeera has found evidence that some Gaddafi spies were operating among senior circles within the National Transitional Council and its army of rebels. The documents in Libya's intelligence headquarters show the spies intercepted messages between the opposition and foreign governments. Al Jazeera has decided not to publish the names of those mentioned in the document for the safety of those involved. Jamal El-Shail has our exclusive report.
A decades-old leaders fall from grace. Portraits of the brother leader, Muammar Gaddafi, smashed and discarded in one of the Libyan colonel's most important institutions, the headquarters of the country's intelligence services. In one of the Libyan are now in control. So much so, one of them relaxes on the bed of the notorious Libyan spy master Abdullah Sanusi, a compound holding some of the world's most sought-after secrets, now a rebel outpost.
The fact that I've been able to find so many secret documents at the office of the head of the intelligence services here indicates that Gaddafi's regime could have been caught unaware by the rebels' advance onto Tripoli.
But that didn't have to be the case. In a sealed envelope on Abdullah Sanusi's desk, Al Jazeera found these documents. They appear to be detailed briefings sent by one of Gaddafi's spies operating among the most senior of circles within the National Transitional Council
in Benghazi and Tunisia.
The documents provide Gaddafi's forces with maps detailing key weapon sites across the Western Mountains and specifically the key town of Az-Zawiya. Az-Zawiya provided the rebels with a gateway into Tripoli. They named the rebel commanders who will lead the attack on Ghazaya and Az-Zawiya, together with how many fighters they command, the weapons they will use, and even the vehicles they will drive. Also in the documents, intelligence that the rebel fighters were using refugee camps set up by Qatar, the UAE, and Kuwait on the Tunisian border to smuggle in weapons and pickup trucks.
There are 4x4 vehicles and pickup trucks hidden under tents in the Qatari, Emirati, and Kuwaiti aid camps in Tunisia. They are equipped with heavy weaponry. The Tunisian military is complicit in this, based on a deal struck between Qaid Asusi, the emirs of Qatar, Kuwait, and the UAE, and the NTC leader, Mustafa Abdul Jalil. This is in return for favors promised by those Gulf countries. The head of the Tunisian army, Rashid Ammar, is witness to this deal.
The double agent who wrote this briefing also singled out names of NTC leaders, a target list for assassinations.
I suggest we carry out operations against leading figures within the National Transitional Council.
In return for all this information, this double agent had 3 simple demands: a luxurious car, preferably a BMW, a quote, exceptional amount of cash, and a Thuraya satellite phone to make sensitive phone calls with. Gaddafi's secret service also used intelligence provided by its embassies around the world to spy on Libyan expatriates supporting the opposition from abroad. This document provided by the embassy in Malta suggests that a number of Libyans who are alleged to have met with Goma Gomati, an NTC leader in London, should be kidnapped.
The above mentioned have hostile activities. Their traveling to Britain and meeting with Goma Gomati proves this.
Al Jazeera also uncovered documents that showed Gaddafi's spy network was able to intercept highly sensitive NTC emails. including those from Mahmoud Jibril, head of the NTC. This appears to be an email from the Foreign Ministry of Cyprus to leaders in Benghazi outlining a planned visit by their government to the rebel stronghold. But Gaddafi might not have been the only one doing the spying. This intelligence officer, who actually worked in this building, claims that he was a double agent working for the rebel forces.
I was responsible for taking weapons from the storage in As-Sayyid Street and giving them to Gaddafi loyalists. But instead, I would take these weapons, conceal them in bags, and take them to my own house. Then, in the middle of the night, I would take them to rebel forces in the towns of Qasr Khiyar and Alous to arm them.
Spying and espionage have always been a very dangerous game. Now that there are thousands of top-secret documents in rebel hands, many of them potentially damning of those within their own ranks, there is a real threat that this could trigger a spate of reprisals. Jamal Al-Shayal, Al Jazeera, Tripoli.
Well, my colleague Darine Abu Ghader earlier spoke about the spying revelations to Al-Amin Belhaj, a member of the National Transitional Council in Tripoli.
There is no screening. We are not a formal military, formal army, so everyone can join. And of course, we expect that some of the people joining the front are from Gaddafi, and they're sending information. That's a reality, and we know that, and we have some documents that showing that some of the rebels, some people inside the rebels in the front, sending some information to Gaddafi, and we know that.
Okay, but it's more than rebels on the front line, sir, because the documents show that Gaddafi spies were operating among the most senior of circles within the National Transitional Council. Again, how can you confirm or be sure that Gaddafi spies are still not operating within the NTC?
They have been sent to the NTC because of their history. People know them very well inside their cities. They are not chosen randomly. Everyone sent to the NTC as a member of the NTC has been chosen from the city he lives there, so they know him very well. And
there's complete trust. Then is what you're saying is that there is complete trust among senior members of the NTC.
Gaddafi men given extra week to surrender. Decisión del Consejo de Transición Nacional de Libia ha dado una semana extra de Muammar Gaddafi partidarios de establecer las armas. El Consejo, conocido por su sigla NTC, se ha extendido la fecha límite de entrega de Sirte, último bastión de Gaddafi, en una semana. Muammar Gaddafi, un portavoz de la NTC, dijo el jueves. Dijo, no estamos en una carrera para entrar a Sirte. No tiene importancia económica y no vamos a perder las víctimas de ella. Podemos cortar los suministros y esperar incluso más de una semana, dijo. Las conversaciones vienen junto con un bloqueo de suministros a la ciudad, dijo un funcionario de NTC. Oda al-Hazera Abdul Hamid, de Informes de Nafalia, decirte, dijo, esta es la consecuencia de las conversaciones en curso entre los líderes de NTC y los líderes tribales en Sirte y otro cerca de la ciudad Arawa. La idea es dar tiempo a las negociaciones que está paseando entre las tribus de Sirte. Ella dijo que algunos líderes tribales basados en Nafalia y en la zona de Ben Hawal han dado el papel de la negociación en nombre de la NTC. NTC está tratando de obtener algún tipo de lealtad tribal que ya desempeñará un papel muy importante en el resultado final de en Sirte, dijo nuestro corresponsal. Translation: Libya's ruling National Transitional Council has given one extra week to Muammar Gaddafi loyalists to lay down weapons. The council, known by its acronym NTC, has extended the deadline for surrender of Gaddafi's last bastion, Sirte, by 1 week. Mohammed Zawawi, an NTC spokesman, said on Thursday, "We're not in a rush to get into Sirte. It has no economic importance, and we are not going to lose casualties for it. We can cut supplies and wait, even more than a week," he said. The talks come alongside a blockade of supplies to the town, an NTC official said. Al Jazeera's Oda Abdul Ahmed, reporting from Nafalia, east of Sirte, said, "This is the consequence of ongoing talks between NTC leaders and tribal leaders in Sirte and another nearby town, Harawa. The idea is to give time to negotiations, which is going to go on between the tribes in Sirte." She said some tribal leaders based in Nafalia and Benjawad area have been given the role of negotiating on behalf of the NTC. NTC is trying to get some sort of tribal allegiance, as it will play a very important role in the final outcome of Sirte, our correspondent said.
Military's use of force during the raid as to get in Israel, and what are the papers saying about it?
Well, we've yet to hear from the government, and the government has said they're not going to comment on this till the report is officially presented, which should be later today. Now, the papers have got the headlines pretty much as you said it. First, Ma'ariv, which is a Hebrew daily here, says blockade legal but force excessive. And you see that same headline in one of the English language dailies. Same thing. IDF was under no illegal conditions, but that the force was excessive. And you have Haaretz here, which is talking about the threat from Turkey to downgrade the ties. As you mentioned, Turkey has said Israel has to today to issue an official apology for the incident, which was now more than 15 months ago. This report has been delayed 3 times. But Turkey has been consistent, saying that they expect the Israelis to apologize once this report is issued fully.
All right, so both sides then at fault in this report, Carl. As you said, Ankara is warning of consequences if Israel doesn't apologize. How much would this hurt Israel? We've heard of sanctions, of course. How much would this hurt Israel if Turkey were to go ahead with this?
Well, as you mentioned, the report certainly doesn't disappoint when it comes to diplomatic language. It blames both sides. But again, Turkey has maintained that it will downgrade its diplomatic ties with Israel, and that will hurt. I mean, Turkey, in many ways, is seen as a bridge to the Arab world, in the same way, in many ways, similar ways to Egypt. I mean, Turkey, for a long time, mediated between Syria and Israel before we saw the recent internal problems in Syria. So Turkey is a bridge, and when you start taking down the flags at embassies and expelling ambassadors, it's certainly a very tense diplomatic situation, even more than a year after the incident itself.
Okay, thank you very much, Carl Perry, live for us in Jerusalem. Japan's new prime minister has picked close allies for his new cabinet. They include a number of new faces. Yoshihiko Noda is trying to steer the country through troubled times caused by an earthquake, a tsunami, a nuclear crisis, and a lengthy economic slump. Noda is Japan's 6th prime minister in 5 years. Well, for more, we're joined by Seijiro Takeshita, who's director of the Securities and Investment Group Mizuho International, based in London. Thank you very much for your time. It seems that Prime Minister Noda has picked a cabinet of relatively unknown politicians. What does this say about the direction in which he wants to steer the country, and what do you make of this lineup?
Well, actually, I can see 2 clear things. Firstly, I think what he's trying to do is get a coordination within the DPJ, because Noda-san himself isn't from a very big faction, but he wants to make sure that he is not going to make the same mistake as his predecessor did, which is basically Mr. Khan being too anti-Ozawa and Mr. Hataya being to pro-Ozawa, obviously you are going to get division. So he's taking what I would call the middle-of-the-road type of policy, which basically satisfies everybody. And in that sense, I think he's done the right thing. And secondly, what I can see clearly is he's choosing, yes, you're saying, you know, a lot of ministers are inexperienced, but a lot of these ministers are from their ex-Association community.